So I mean, I think trying to get access to a mental performance professional is usually a good start. I think there are lots of people who are out there who are delivering services for reasonable costs, or maybe who are in their training who maybe do service for free. So, for example, when I was in my graduate school program at BU, I would do mental performance coaching with high school kids from like a local public school for free. So, there was Everett High School, which is in Massachusetts, Lexington High School. I did free mental performance consulting with those two high school teams. It was like basketball for one, and then I think it was track and field for the other one. So if you're looking to get mental performance coaching, there are a lot of programs around the country. Where are you located, Adya?
I'm in Texas. I'm in Frisco,
In Texas.
Texas.
Okay, so like I think North Texas maybe has like a sports psych program. So like you would have to do research to see if there are sports psych programs in your area, but you could talk to your AD at your high school, or you could talk to your coach and see if they'd be willing to bring somebody in. There are also a lot of people that can do sports psychology coaching virtually as well. And for anyone who's in a graduate program, that's going to be free. So you don't need to have any money to get access to those. They'd be interns at that point. But you get people that are sports psychology trained who are working on achieving their CMPC, which is Certified Mental Performance Coach, and you could do that totally for free. Um, I mean, the next thing I would probably do if I didn't have access to a mental performance coach would be like bibliotherapy, so just reading books. There are classics out there like Inner Game of Tennis is a classic. I think that can be really helpful for anybody. I work with a lot of golfers, so Golf is Not a Game of Perfect by Bob Rotella is a classic one that I think can be really helpful. There are tons and tons of sport mental performance books out there that they are meant for the general public to consume. They're not meant for therapists or mental performance coaches necessarily, but it's all written in a way that should be understandable for the athlete. So those two are the ones that I like the best, probably that I would recommend. Bob Rotella, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, and Inner Game of Tennis. Even if you don't play those two sports, I think especially Inner Game of Tennis can generalize to anywhere, any different sport.
I mean, I
And
definitely
then I
agree with
guess
you. I actually have the
Inner
inner game of
Game.
tennis right here. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Yes.
I'll definitely be reading Bob Rotell's book as well. It was what did you say it was titled?
So it's called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect.
Golf is not a game of perfect. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I could probably go on all day about different books, but those two kind of stand out as pillars for me that I really have taken a lot from. Rotella's got a few other ones, How Champions Think. Um, I think the Inner Game of Tennis guy has a couple others based on other sports too, but I think those would be two good steps. And then the third thing that I kind of like is watching professional sports, paying attention to your favorite athletes. What are they doing? What do they say in their interviews? There's a lot that I take from that and I use with my clients to show them kind of the ways that those athletes go about their business is maybe different from how people assume that they do things. I think there's a lot that can be learned from press conferences, watching like those documentaries. So like Full Swing or Breakpoint or F1 Drive to Survive or Quarterback or Receiver. I think all those shows can usually give a pretty good insight on the sports psychology, mental side of the game, for what pros are doing. So those three maybe would be like find a mental performance coach somehow. It doesn't even have to cost money. Um, Bibliotherapy, I think, is a good way. So reading good books about the mental game, and then watching pro sports and watching your favorite athletes and learning from them, whether it's documentaries or just paying attention to the sport.
Okay. And so what about you? What kind of took you from, I guess, studying psychology at, you said BU, right? So what kind of took you from studying psychology at BU into, I guess, working full time with athletes, on that like sports psychology side? Like, do you have a background in sports? Did you kind of grow up around like a sports scene? Like, why does it
Yeah,
matter to you?
yeah. So I mean, I've always loved sports. I played baseball growing up. I honestly wasn't very good for a while. I practiced hard and eventually played on my high school team. But I was not like the best player, and I think that a lot of times I get really anxious. I wouldn't be very confident. I would, have trouble with like throwing accuracy. So there could be like times where you could probably classify it as the yips where, I'm really worried about messing up the throw. So I just kind of baby the throw and spike it right into the ground. So I had trouble with that when I was a kid. I think I also had a lot of like identity fusion with sports. So sports is the only thing I care about. It's the only thing in my life that I think I'm good at. It's the only thing I know about. So, I think this happens to a lot of teenagers that I work with is that they become totally enmeshed with their sport. And that's the only thing that they can like derive self-esteem from. And that's really difficult. And that was really difficult for me. So, when my sports career was over, that was a difficult adjustment. I didn't play in college. I went to Boston College for my undergrad, studied psychology, and basically didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Discovered sports psychology. I took a couple sports psychology classes at BC, met my professor, Dr. Christy Moore, who kind of introduced me to sports psychology, and then went on to do the counseling, so mental health counseling and sports psychology concentration at BU for a master's degree. So what I do now is that I am a full-time mental health counselor, and when you're at BU, you also get your training in sports psychology, and you can get your certified mental performance consultant uh, certification, CMPC. So I have that as well. So I currently work full time as a therapist, working mostly with kids and teenagers, and I work on mental health stuff, anxiety, depression, ADHD, executive functioning, that sort of thing. And then athletes has kind of become my niche that I work with specifically. So golfers, tennis players, hockey players, baseball players, working on all kinds of sports psychology related things, mental performance related things, as well as sometimes on the therapy side of things as well. So that's kind of how I got here. It took, 6 years of school, 4 years in undergrad and 2 years of grad school, hours of internships to kind of get here. I should be getting my Massachusetts independent counseling license in the next couple months, hopefully. Um, but yeah, it's like a love of sports. I think that drew me here, wanting to help people, being really fascinated by psychology, is probably what has gotten me to this point.
I mean, congratulations. Like getting all of that done and I mean like kind of putting that passion towards a project where you can help other people and help these athletes kind of overcome their own mental barriers. I think it's like it's honestly one of the greatest things and it's something that I also want to do past college. So I think it's super, super cool that you're able to do that. Um
Yeah,
and
it's a
I,
ton of
I
fun.
understand that you have, I guess, your own sports performance program, Riser and Tread. And I noticed that it was built around like a couple of core pillars, and you mentioned one, which was identity just now, right?
Yeah,
So why is why do you think identity is kind of like this piece that often gets missed by athletes? Like, why do you think it's something that I guess sometimes we don't consider?
that's a really good question. Um, and I could probably talk for like 5 hours about this, but I think it is a tendency for people to find their thing that they're good at or that they care the most about or know the most about, and that they can kind of derive confidence and self-esteem and competence from. And a very obvious thing to do that with, especially in like middle school and high school and even college, is sports. You get a lot of like external rewards for being good at sports. Like you're usually cool if you're good at sports, and you get, praise from adults if you're good at sports. You can get college scholarships if you're good at sports. And there is like a culture to put 100% of yourself into that thing if you want to become successful at it. There's potentially like millions of dollars on the line if you can be good at sports. So what I find is like teenagers and young people in general who are trying to like find themselves find sports, maybe discover that they're pretty good at it or that they really enjoy it, and then they put all of their eggs into that basket of sports. And I think that that can sometimes lead to good outcomes because you learn to be like a good teammate and maybe you learn to like work really hard and maybe you become really successful. But it can also be a problem because like everybody's sports career ends someday. You know, people get injured, people age out, people eventually get cut and told like, hey, you're no longer good enough to do this. And then people kind of run into problems when that happens. So a lot of the work that I do is trying to work with people on developing a more well-rounded and like diverse identity. So yes, you are maybe a badminton player, but do you also have other hobbies? Do you like to play music? Do you like to do visual art? Do you like to sing or act or watch movies or cook? You are a tennis player, but you're also like maybe a good brother or a good son, or you like to volunteer at the dog shelter, or you like to play the guitar. So there are these different aspects of a person that if you develop and you find confidence and self-esteem from other areas besides just being an athlete, then one, I think it's really protective for when one day all of our sport careers ends and you're just a more well-balanced person. But I also find that I think that can help you to play better in your sport as well if you don't have the pressure that says, oh, if I don't, win this match here, then I'm going to feel terrible and I've got no worth besides how well I play in this game, right? The only thing I can feel good about in my life is my tennis ranking, right? That's a tough amount of pressure to play sports with. So my belief is that people that have more diverse identities and sport is only one part of what they do can actually be much more successful because they can play free. They can, play for fun. They can play evaluating themselves based off of effort and preparation and having a good time, being a good person. I think those people play better because they don't have, this kind of crushing weight that if I don't win, I've got nothing. Um, so I can weave in so many different ways, but I think those are the main ones that I try to help people with.
I think it's super interesting too. I feel like with every single mental performance professional that I've spoken with, there are two recurring themes, and one of them is playing free, and the other one is detaching yourself from the outcomes. And I
Mm,
think you kind of touched on both of those, um, right there. But
absolutely.
yeah, like, how would an athlete, like, if I could tell somebody, if I could give somebody, like, I guess, like an exercise or a technique right now that maybe they could write in their journal, or they could do something on the court right now. What
Hmm.
would that one exercise be to kind of, I guess, detach themselves from those outcomes or to start to be able to play free? And I understand it might not be like you snap your fingers and you get like an instant change, but maybe something they can start doing today so that they can build towards that feeling of playing free or detaching from those outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, I think both of those things are difficult to do and they both take practice. So I think that's something you've maybe heard before too, is that mental skills like physical skills need to be practiced and trained and honed over time. Like I can tell somebody to not pay attention to the outcome, but then when they're, you know, down by 8 points in the fourth quarter with like a minute left, it's very hard to not be thinking
Yeah.
about the fact that this is what the score is in the game right now. And even myself, like I play golf and when I'm out there and I make a triple bogey, I'm like, oh well, great. My front nine is kind of ruined, and it's very difficult to move on from that. Um, so that'd be the first thing is just like whatever you do to work on those things, and those are great things to try to work on. It takes some time and it needs to be trained and it needs to be kind of ingrained in your brain over and over and over. I guess I'll just answer the first part about outcomes because that's kind of what I've been talking about. And the thing that I generally teach people, and it depends on the sport, is having some sort of process that you can rely on. So some sort of routine that you feel comfortable with the fact that it's going to give you the best chance possible to perform. So the outcome of any sporting event is completely out of our control or almost entirely out of our control. But the things that you do in your preparation and in your routines are within your control. So to use golf as an example, if an athlete was to be finding themselves distracted by the score, I would probably help them to create a pre-shot routine that was meant to shift their attention from irrelevant stimuli like the score or the leaderboard and shift it onto something that is relevant, such as planning out their next shot. Where's the bunker? What club are you choosing? Which way is the wind going? What swing thought might you have? Okay. Maybe part of your routine helps you take a deep breath, ground yourself, and allow your body to play free and allow your body to take the next swing. So when I say process, I consider process to be preparation and routines combined, basically. And they are controllables that will set you up to give yourself the best chance to be successful in a sport. You ultimately can't control the outcome of any sporting event, but you can control the routines. So if you want something else to pay attention to that isn't the outcome, I would help somebody probably to develop a process that they feel comfortable in, and over time they can develop some trust in.
Okay. Kind of talking about that pre-shot routine. So, can you give me an example of maybe like a routine that you would tell maybe a badminton player? Like if I missed like four shots in a row, what is something that I could do to kind of, I guess, reset? Maybe a pre-game routine or a pre-shot routine.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're describing would probably be a reset routine of some kind. So, one thing that's usually good for a reset routine is some sort of cue or reminder that you should be resetting yourself. So some people will have a cue word that says like flush it or reset or slow down. Something that you've practiced, like in practice when you've lost a few points in a row. So a cue word can be really helpful. And then a concept that I am passionate about and I use a lot in my sports psychology and my therapeutic work is mindfulness. So the ability to pay attention to the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally, is mindfulness. And that ability to like anchor back into the present moment, let go of the last shot, don't worry about the outcome of the match, the final shot is, you could incorporate into a routine a grounding breath. You could squeeze the grip of the racket. You could turn around and look at some visual cue that is meant to reset you and bring you back into the moment. Because what happens on those skids that you're talking about or a certain slump is you're probably getting hooked and caught up in different thoughts that you're having. Oh, why did I make that mistake? Oh, I need to make this technical change. Oh, this is going to happen if I lose. And if your attention is paying attention to those thoughts, it's not paying attention to the current point. It's not paying attention to the next thing that you need to do task-wise in your game. So if you can use mindfulness and practice mindfulness outside of sports, practice mindfulness inside of sports to be able to more quickly shift your attention from something unproductive like these unhelpful thoughts and shift it onto something that is present moment and task focused, then you're going to probably give yourself a better chance to kind of break out of that skid or reset yourself to focus on the point ahead of time. So that routine could look different for anybody. Like for me on the golf course, what I do is before every single shot, I make my whole plan of what shot that I want to do. I stand behind the ball, this club, I'm aiming at this point. I'm gonna, need to carry it this far to get over the bunker, as specific as a plan as I can possibly come up with. Then I take a deep diaphragmatic breath in through my nose, out through my mouth, trying to keep my shoulders relaxed and expanding my stomach. Then I will squeeze the grip of my golf club, feel the rubber in my hands, feel the tension in my hand as I squeeze it, and then feel the way that my muscles in my hand relaxes as I let go of the club. Once I've done that, I step up to the ball, I look at the target, and then I just let my body execute the swing. So that would be my routine to incorporate my thinking portion of my process, my mindfulness anchoring portion of my process where I squeeze the golf club and I take my deep breath. And then once I've done that, that has allowed me to be fully present and task focused without any other distracting thoughts, such that my body can hopefully just execute the shot as well as I possibly can. And then I have to accept whatever happens. I hit a good shot sometimes, plenty of times I don't hit a good shot. There's no guarantee. in any sport, badminton, golf, basketball, that you're going to execute every single time, but you can set yourself up to give yourself the best chance to execute.
Okay, and that's kind of what that pre-shot routine is for, right? To give yourself, I get put yourself in that I guess environment where you're able to execute the shot well or execute the shot um without those nerves.
Yeah. Or with the
Okay,
nerves, but hopefully they don't get in your way. Hopefully they're not
okay,
distracting you from the task at hand.
okay. And then I mean I understand that sometimes maybe a mental performance professional isn't the only voice in an athlete's ear. I mean, like you also have maybe their parents or like a coach for their sport that's outside of your office. So, like, what do you think the biggest mistake that you see that parents or coaches are making with these young athletes? Because I know that sometimes, like, I have a couple of friends who maybe have a little bit of pressure from maybe their parents or maybe from their coaches. What is something that parents and coaches can do in order to kind of step away from pressuring their athlete? Like, how can they kind of support that identity and performance for their young athletes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think focus on outcomes is something that happens a lot that can kind of implicitly send a message to a kid that their value is very much tied up in the outcome of a sporting event, so like a score or ranking or winning. Something as simple as you pick your kid up from their game, and the first question you ask them is like, "Did you win?" First question you ask them is like, "What'd you shoot?" Um, that could be something small, and I don't think it's something that parents necessarily do on purpose, but if you do that every day for your kids, 10 years from 10 years old to 20 years old, they're, may eventually start to think that, the first thing that my parents care about knowing about me is what did I shoot or did I win? Um, so I think very small stuff like that can be problematic. Like again, nobody's perfect. Like I definitely probably talk to some of my clients and I'm like, how'd it go? Like, did you play good or not? Um, so I think, treating your kid like a kid, treating your kid like a whole person and not just an athlete. It's great to be involved with their sports and to get to spend that quality time together. And it's great to, sometimes push your kids to try things that are hard or to try to be their very best. And also there can be, I think, a fine line, like you said, with pressure and identity and like, are there dads out there who the only thing they talk to their sons about is just sports and they don't know that much else about them? Sure. There's also tons of great sports parents out there who do an amazing job, and I see those parents on a daily basis of, we want them to have fun, we want them to learn life lessons, we want them to, go through challenges and overcome. And there's just as many of those parents out there as there are the ones that are kind of putting a ton of pressure on their kids. Um, So it's not all that different from what we talked about at the beginning. It's just when you have a kid who's maybe 8, 9, 10, those attitudes about outcome and process have to come from the parents. And a lot of that has to be delivered through implicit behavior and not necessarily through active coaching for someone that young. So yeah, I guess that's my answer.
It's kind of like having a healthy balance, but also when an athlete is maybe a little bit younger and more impressionable, the parents and coaches have to, I guess, be a little bit more intentional on maybe how much emphasis they're putting on that performance, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think like in Germany, they don't even keep score of games until, kids are like 15 or 16 for soccer.
Oh, really?
I could be wrong about that, but I think there was a Malcolm Gladwell podcast where he was talking about that and how youth sports in different countries is different. But I've clients who are, 8, 9 years old. They're on elite soccer teams that cost a lot of money and travel across the country. A lot of these sports, it starts very, very young with ranking and tiers of the elite team and the C level team and the D level team, and then there's the A's. So like, those things can be good to get good coaching for your kid, and there's a lot of like better sports medicine and physio and knowledge about how sports and kids' bodies work when it comes to that stuff that I think is a great benefit. And also like, maybe if your kid's 9, like then they're there to have fun and hopefully learn and come at it from that perspective. So, and there's no right way to parent your kid as well. Like there's so many different styles and every kid is different, every parent is different. And I don't pretend to know how to tell people exactly what they should do with their kids.
That makes sense. Um, well, I only have two more questions for you, and
Okay,
then we
cool.
can go ahead and call it a day. But
Awesome.
um, kind of going into one of I guess my favorite traditions with I guess the lines of questioning that I'm kind of asking mental performance professionals. There's a podcast that I really, really like called The Diary of a CEO, and it's by Stephen Bartlett.
Hmm.
And a tradition that they have on their podcast that I kind of stole and put on this one is that they'll always ask the previous guest for a question, and then they'll ask the current guest that same question. So, before I interviewed you, let's see if I can unblur my background. Before I interviewed you, I interviewed the author of this book, The
Hmm.
Energy Bus, and his name is John Gordon. So John Gordon is a 17-time best-selling author, and a lot of his work kind of revolves around staying positive and channeling that positivity into your life and the benefits that kind of having that positivity and that energy can have on your mental performance. So I guess in typical John Gordon fashion, he wanted me to ask you how you stay positive.
Hmm. How do I stay positive? That is a good question. Um, I I think that I'm a pretty naturally positive person, which is a bad answer, and that's not my entire answer. Um, but I think I'm maybe blessed with like a positive outlook generally. I think I've always kind of been that way. I think I've become more that way, I guess, as I've grown older, and I don't know if there is a mechanism that exactly leads to that. I think that positive psychology is cool. I haven't read John Gordon's book. I would be interested to check it out. I would say that related to that is I mentioned mindfulness before, and mindfulness is something that I do a lot of practice of myself and do a ton with my clients, is all about non-judgment. So things are not necessarily good or bad. They just are what they are. And we are moving through life and trying to work with certain obstacles. Some things go good, some things go bad. I think part of this mindfulness is like an acceptance of the way that things are. You can still strive for things, you can still try to change your situation in some ways, but there is a general acceptance of good, bad, in between, cold, hot, ugly, pretty, whatever, is like withholding that judgment to some extent. So staying positive, right? Like you could be in a rainstorm. And if you judge that situation as cold and uncomfortable and gross, you're not going to feel very positive and you're not going to feel very good. But I think part of mindfulness and part of non-judgment is maybe I can be in a rainstorm and I can say, wow, this is really beautiful, right? The way that the rain looks against the street lights as I'm walking home is really beautiful. The sounds that the rain makes as it hits the pavement is really interesting and a sound that I don't hear that much. The smell that the rain makes as it hits the pavement or it hits the grass and it, releases these things into the air is a smell that I don't always get to notice when I'm sitting in my office and I'm working. So it's not necessarily just positivity, but I think it's appreciation for the moment, mindfulness, and like withholding judgment from things as like good, bad, comfortable, or uncomfortable. It's this ability to kind of just notice and observe and be present with what is. And I think there's an inherent maybe positivity that comes with that because you're withholding that judgment as something as bad.
Okay, that is an excellent answer. Like kind of taking things for what they are, and like I guess that practice of noticing.
Just noticing, just observing, not judging.
That is actually so beautiful. Well, Joey, at the very, very beginning, I kind of asked you for practices that I guess junior athletes can use to reach out to these mental performance professionals. So now I kind of wanted to ask you, this is the very, very last thing. If any of the people listening want to reach out to you and they wanted to book a session or maybe learn a little bit more from your work, where are places that they can kind of do that? So do you have like a website or some socials that they can maybe follow and
Yes.
take a look at your work?
So our website is riserandtread.com. So riserandtread.com. To find me on the website, you can go to riserandtread.com/SPNR. SPNR is the sports performance and recovery program that I run with a team of 12 other mental performance coaches and mental health clinicians. Um, we are able to do sessions in Massachusetts in person, or for mental performance coaching, we can go telehealth all across the country. We work with teams, we work with schools, and we work with individuals as well. We work with a ton of golfers, but we also have people on our team that work with all kinds of different sports. We have former X Games athletes on our team. We've got former Division I athletes, swimmers, and track runners, and golfers and basketball players. So I think no matter who you are, no matter what sport you play, we probably have somebody that could potentially be helpful for you. Um, and our goal would be to hopefully get you playing your best, but also enjoying your sport and developing that diverse identity and just growing as a person. Because as I mentioned before, I think if you grow as a person and you can accept yourself and accept your identity as multifaceted and not just an athlete, that actually will hopefully help you to play better and reach your athletic goals as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to join this interview today. It was honestly so nice to get to interview you and gain a little bit more insight into what it is that you do, but also what athletes can kind of do in order to, I guess, kind of boost that mental performance aspect of their game.